Starting now, and I'll do your intro. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for logging on and attending this morning's program. My name is Matt Schumann. I am on the programming team here at Carey Library. Before we begin, just a few things to note. If there are any technical issues, please let me know. I can try to resolve them for you. You can send those to me in the chat. And please use the Q&A button for any questions or comments, and we will address those at the end. We will be sending out the recipe after this program, and this program will be recorded and put on our YouTube page. You can just search Carey Library. You can also see all of Trisha's past events with us. This program is made possible by the generous donors to the Carey Library Foundation. I'd like to now introduce Trisha Pérez Kennealy. Trisha is the owner of the Inn at Hastings Park here in Lexington, where she's filming from today. She has been hosting not only our monthly cooking series with the library, but making videos for the Inn's own Instagram and operating an ever-changing business throughout the pandemic. We are grateful for her taking her time to educate us on how to make various delicious foods. So now please welcome Trisha.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so excited that it's spring, finally. And it's also hard to believe that it's been over a year since we have been experiencing this pandemic. This particular recipe for pizza is something that we made a lot frequently early on. We were lucky enough to be able to find yeast, so we put it to good use. And one of the things that my family and I tried to do was replicate recipes that were some of our favorite recipes that we couldn't really have access to because everything was shut down. So one of my favorite places to have pizza is a pizza place in Harvard Square called Pinocchio's. And they're particularly known for their Sicilian style pizza, which is that square pizza. And I found a really easy dough that you can make in your KitchenAid. So what I've done, and Matt, I don't know, I sent you the recipe this morning. I didn't know if you had a chance, if you could post that to the link for people.
I will send it out in the recap after the event.
Okay, so what I've done is I've measured out flour. I used all-purpose flour, but if you have access to Italian flour, I would highly recommend giving it a try. For those of you who may be gluten sensitive, a lot of people feel that if they eat Italian flour or flour from other European countries, they don't tend to have the same reaction that they do to eating American flour. And that's because a lot of the flour that's grown in Europe is not genetically modified the way it is here. If you were using an American brand flour, I'm a big fan of King Arthur. They have wonderful gluten-free products. Theirs is called, I think, Measure for Measure. Thomas Keller from the French Laundry also makes a fantastic gluten-free product. So this recipe has flour in it, it has yeast in it, it has kosher salt. You really want to make sure that you have the salt because you want that crust to have that taste. I actually add some Italian seasoning to it. This one was heavy on the oregano. It has a little bit of olive oil. And this is probably one of my favorite and best uses of my KitchenAid mixer. I am not a big fan of having a million gadgets in one's kitchen. But a KitchenAid mixer, you know, most people would say, oh, they're so expensive. They can run anywhere between $300 and $500, depending on whether or not you get it on sale. But I have had the same KitchenAid mixer for close to 20 years. So I really believe that it's the type of investment, the type of tool that you would really like to have in your kitchen, especially if you like to do any type of baking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out. I've measured this all out. I'm going to put it into my mixing bowl. And then the other thing is too, what's a little bit different about this recipe, there is yeast in it, but I'm not taking that traditional step of mixing the yeast with water and activating it. I taught a class earlier this week. People were making hot cross buns, and some of the students had a little bit of problem with their yeast in their water. You do want to be conscious of the temperature of the water when you're mixing it with the yeast, because if it's too hot, it can kill the yeast. And if it's too cold, it actually won't activate properly. What I did before we started was I actually went into the kitchen and we have our coffee maker, and I can take boiling water right out of that feature. So I know that this water is currently too hot. If you're going to use a thermometer to test the temperature of your water, I would highly recommend using a Thermopen or a type of thermometer that you can stir around. If you're taking water from the tap and you just take an initial measurement and don't stir around the water, your temperature is going to be inconsistent because the water could be at different temperatures depending, that's just something that happens. So you do want to use your thermometer to give that a stir. I'm actually going to, I apologize. I thought that I had olive oil right behind me. I'm just going to run into the kitchen and get that. I'm also going to grab some cold water because this water that I've already brought out is a little bit too hot. So I apologize for that. So I apologize for that. I always try to tell my kids that it's important to have all of our mise en place, all of our ingredients in place. But I was trying to improve the sound. Is everyone okay? Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So what I did was I went into the kitchen.
Trisha, your sound just dropped out and froze. Also, I'm not sure if it's, yeah, okay, you're back, but not this. Okay, there you are.
Am I back?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so what I have here is a Thermocue. This is actually a very, an extremely expensive, yeah, and I can tell this water, I knew this water is at about 157 degrees, and optimally I would want it between 105 and 110. So what I'm gonna do is I actually went into the kitchen, I got some cold water. I am going to put the cold water in here, and it's about a cup and a third that I need. Yeah, so the water that came out of the tap was around 67 degrees. I am going to mix it with some of this hot water. And that was a little bit more than I needed, or less than I needed. Now I'm having the issue that it's not hot enough, so I'll dump a little bit more. All right. All right, we're going to go the other way. We're going to start with the hot water. So again, I just want to be a little bit precise with this. And we'll let it cool for a little bit. All right. All right, so I'm going to stir that, and I'm just going to let that come to temperature a little bit, and then we'll work on the dough. So one of the things that's a little bit challenging about this demo is that obviously I can't wait during the demo for the dough to come to temperature. So I woke up this morning and I made pizza dough. So this is one batch of the dough, and look at that, it came off nicely off of the bottom of that pan. What I want to do is I'm going to weigh this dough because I want to see, if I'm trying to portion it, if I'm making individual pizzas for people, I want to know how much to use. So this is about 25 ounces worth of dough. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split this dough. I'm going to split it in half. I'm actually going to spray this pan with a little bit of cooking spray. And what I'm using is a quarter sheet, okay? If I wanted to make it in one pan, I could use what's called a half sheet, which would be 2 of these together. And what I have here is I have a series of fixings. I have, of course, pepperoni. I have some beautiful focaccia salami. I have some shredded mozzarella. I have a store-bought pizza sauce. I use Rouse. We really like it if I'm short for time. Obviously, you can make your own as well. And then I also have some thinly sliced fresh mozzarella. And what I would like to do with my family is that I kind of give everybody like a half of the quarter sheet, and they can make their own. But in order to do that, I divide out the dough. And what I'm doing is I'm zeroing out the pan, and I'm just going to come through and split that in half. And as you can see, the dough, what I like, the dough is nice and pliable. Oh, sometimes it just works. Exactly what I needed. So that was 12. So what I like about this is that I don't have to get overly fussy about, oh, can I throw the pizza in the air and make it work like they do in the pizza restaurants. I'm using gravity to sort of stretch it out a little bit. And if you come closer, Judy, we can show them that you see those like beautiful flecks of oregano in there. I just think it adds a little bit of interest to the taste of the pizza. So I'm coming in and I'm pushing, and I'm not going to be overly concerned if I can't get it perfectly, to fit in the whole tray. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one edge, so I'm getting that nice edge for it. What I like about this dough recipe is that you saw, I made it early this morning, and then it's ready to go. This is actually a really simple, when we start pulling it together. I'm going to check that temperature. Still too hot. This particular dough recipe is incredibly forgiving. You can make it in the morning, and then you can even do this as a quick weeknight dinner. It takes 8 minutes for the dough to come together in your standing mixer, right? So 8 minutes is quicker than you might, make a more complicated dinner. And what I like about it too is that it gives everyone the flexibility to have exactly what they want on their pizza. So what I'm doing is I'm just using the palm of my hand. I'm trying to make sure that we're even. And as you can see, I really am beginning to get it so that it's filling that entire quarter sheet. I can feel from pushing down on my hand that there's a little bit more thickness on this side. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to push through. I'm trying to stretch. It's getting a little thinner on that side, so I want to be a little bit careful. And while this is happening, I've also made sure that my oven is at a really high temperature. The oven that I use here when I demonstrate for all of you does not go beyond 450 degrees. But what I've done for the sake of this demo is I've actually used the convection function on the oven. And the way the convection function works in terms of temperature, anytime you use the convection oven, if let's say you put a 375 degree oven on convection, that is the equivalent to a 400 degree oven. So I'm using a little bit of the technology to my advantage to try to get up to that high temperature. But if you are able to get your oven to that really hot 500, that's really where you want to be, because that'll really ensure that you get that nice crispiness on the outside of your dough, and take it from there. All right, so I was able to get that stretched out pretty thin. There's a little bit of break there, so I'm just gonna come back a little bit and fix that, right? And the thing about homemade pizza is that it doesn't always have to be that perfect shape. If we can get it, great, but that kind of works for us. I'm gonna come back in here. I am still a little bit too warm on that. So while that's continuing to go, I am going to decorate my pizza. And wow, there we go. My arm workout came in handy. I like to be generous with my sauce, but I know that some people, might like just white pizza. So as I said, if I love doing like homemade pizzas for dinner parties, especially when it's families. It gives everyone, like there's something interactive for everyone to do. Everyone can make their own pizza. It's colorful. It's a good way to kind of make sure that everyone gets a little bit of what they want. What I'm going to do on here is I'm going to do 3 kinds of pizza in one. So this is my fresh mozzarella. So if I were doing a margarita style, and a lot of the different mozzarella companies now have it that you can get this in like the thinly sliced. So I just think that if you're short on time, it's a great product. This is actually a pizza blend. So this has like mozzarella, it has a little bit of Parmesan. This is, probably, this is more Italian style, right? That I have like the fresh mozzarella. There probably would be a little bit less sauce on it. I'm gonna put a little bit more of this here. So pepperoni pizza, I think, is really kind of an American thing. So I'm putting that there. But one of the things I love about traveling in Italy is that they often have like these beautiful salamis on it. So I'm going to do that. And I'm actually going to put a little bit more cheese. I'm going to put more of the mozzarella one here. So if I wanted to incorporate some vegetables in it, I often would have, if I was doing this for a dinner party, I would set out a tray just like this. Can you come over here? So I would set out a tray with all of the fixings, right? So I could have some green peppers and red peppers. I could do some half cherry tomatoes. I had some pesto here that I'm going to put on the next pizza that we're going to make. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the oven. If you have a pizza stone, it's a great piece of equipment to use when you're doing this because it enables, it helps to even out the heat across. I'm going to just put the timer on now. Does anybody have any questions?
A couple did come in. Will a meat thermometer work for the water temperature?
This is a meat. The thermometer that I'm using will a meat thermometer. If you're using something like this is a very advanced version of a thermopan, right? It has that metal probe. And we use this to check temps in our kitchen. Okay, there we go. So if you're using a meat thermometer that you shove into a piece of meat and leave there, that's not going to work. But if you're using, like if you have a digital, like one of the remote pens that has a piece like this, it will work, right? You also could be using a candy thermometer. That would also work to do it too. So I'm going to throw caution to the wind because what's a little bit different here is that there are other products that are mixed in here with the yeast. So I know that when I put this in, it's going to cool it off a little bit. So we're just going to go for it. If I killed the yeast, well, we would have had an experiment. So what I'm doing is I put all of the ingredients in. Oh, there we go. I put all the ingredients in. I have the dough hook on, and as you can tell, this machine is pretty powerful. You want to be careful if you're doing a double recipe in your machine. It will dance right off of the counter, and I've had it happen. So this is not something that you want to walk away and leave. You actually need to make sure that you are watching it. And I apologize if this is doing a number on the sound. I want you to go right into the bowl. All right, so what I want is people to see how this works. It's coming off the side of the bowl. And as you can see, it's coming together quite nicely. And the dough is no longer sticking to the hook, right? And so this action is going to take it through. And what you're seeing is that the dough is going to take on a little bit more of a shiny texture. And the dough hook is cutting right through it. Right, so the beauty of the dough hook is it takes away all of that. It just makes it really even and makes sure that the dough is nice and even. Because it's making such a racket, so the dough is still a little bit warm. It's a little bit tacky. You can see that it's kind of sticking to my hands. So I know that that's not ready to go. This is the dough that's it's already been proofed, and it has a little bit more give to it. All right, and I also just realized I'm going to put a little bit of oil in there because I had it in. So I'm going to bring this back up, and I am just going to let this go. I'm going to let it go at a little bit more gentler pace, because I want us to go over. Judy, can you go on over to there? I want them to see what the pizza looks like in the oven, please. What we're beginning to see is that the cheese is melting, especially that white, the fresh mozzarella. We're beginning to see the dough rise a little bit. And you do want to make sure that you kind of rolled it out. This dough cooked for about an hour. Actually, a little. It cooked for more than that. A lot of the newer ovens do have the proofing function, so you can just put your oven on proof, put your dough in a greased bowl like this, cover it with a towel, and leave it in the oven for about an hour. If your kitchen is drafty, some people like to have their things proof in their laundry room, right? With the door closed, the dryer's running, because it's that dry heat. If you have kitchen lights on your, or heating lights on your oven, you can also put the lights on, put the heating lights on, and put the bowl on top of your stove. You're just looking for anywhere that's sort of dry and somewhat warm. All right, this dough is coming right off of the hook. Oh, this is great. So I'm just rolling it into a nice little ball. I'm going to put a little bit of spray, cooking spray in here so it won't stick. I put it in, and then I cover it up. And I'm just going to set it aside, and then that will rise in about an hour. So coming back to the dough over here, if I wanted to do like a traditional round pizza, I'm just going to cut this in half to do that. So you basically just take the pizza in your hands and keep turning it, right? And you can put it like, you know, I'm getting a little bit of a crack there, so I'm just folding it together. But I'm just kind of using gravity to do what I needed to do. Obviously, you can also use a rolling pin to do that as well. But you just kind of pull and turn, pull and turn, and you're good to go. If I were going to be doing this for a dinner party, one thing that I might do is I might actually cook off, like par cook the crust. So maybe have it cook for like 3 or 4 minutes, and then I would have all of the pizza crust sort of ready to go so that people can do it. But it cooks in about 8 minutes. So if you have the oven capacity, you can have 5 or 6 pizzas going at any time on your tray. The other thing that I like to do that is really a lot of fun in the summer, especially as we're getting towards those warmer months, is I actually like to use my grill to make pizza. So the beautiful thing about our grills is that they get super hot. They get hotter than, even hotter than our ovens. So you want to fire up that grill, put all of the gas, if you have a gas grill, you could do this obviously with charcoal too, or with a green egg. You want to fire up that grill and get it to about 500 degrees or even higher. If it's higher, even better, because those hot, when you talk about brick oven pizza or wood burning pizza, the key to the success of that crispiness in the crust has to do with the fact that those ovens are super, super hot, right? They're upward, they could be 800 degrees and the pizza cooks really, really quickly. So what I like to do when I do it on the grill is I roll out all of my pizza dough. I roll them out into pieces like this so that everyone has their individual one. I brush the side that's going to go on the grill with olive oil. You could use a high quality olive oil spray as well. I leave the grill open and I basically, and everyone's like, isn't the pizza dough going to fall through the grate? It's not, because when you open up that, you want everything ready to go. You're going to open up that grill top. You're going to put the dough on, and you just want to have either a pizza peel or a really good metal spatula ready to take it off. 2 or 3 minutes on that side, it's ready to go. And then what I do is I put the cooked side up and let my guests decorate that and then put that back on the grill to finish off the cooking. What I would recommend when you're putting it back for the second cook is that you may want to bring the temperature down just a little bit, more in the 500 range than in the 800 range, so that the underside of the pizza doesn't get burned. But that's a super fun way to make pizza and sort of keep everyone outside, which I would imagine is still going to be very important for people this summer. So let me go over here and see how my pizza is looking. It smells really good. Yeah. Yes, so I can see I'm getting that nice caramelization from the shredded cheese that adds a little bit of that. I just love the way caramelized cheese tastes. You can see that the mozzarella is a little milkier, a little creamier. Now, the important thing about when you're making pizza is that you do not want, I'm just gonna get something else to put that on. You don't want to take your pizza right out of the oven and serve it immediately, because what will happen is all of the cheese will come running off of the pizza, right? We've all seen that happen. So what we want to do is make sure that we give it, just like I talked about with other proteins. Sorry, I just want to get. Just getting the wire wrap. It looks like my team's going to get some pizza for lunch today. So the reason I want to get some air under there is that I don't want there to be condensation under that pizza. I also don't want to melt that dough that's there. So I'm just going to leave that I would leave that for about 4 or 5 minutes. And then what I like to do is I like to have big wooden cutting boards on the table. And then I just cut the pizza so that it's ready to go. So that is our pizza demonstration. So as you can see, pretty straightforward. I made the dough. We're letting that other dough proof for about an hour, but I'd done that beforehand. I was able to roll out not only this pizza, but I rolled out the other 2 portions. So this recipe is probably good for about 4 people. If you're doing recipes that are sort of loaded with vegetables, you could serve it with a really nice grilled green salad, maybe some roasted broccoli, some roasted asparagus, now that that's in season, with a drizzle of olive oil, maybe some Parmesan, a little bit of lemon, and you have a really nice homemade Italian meal for you and your guests, you and your family to enjoy. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, there's actually a bunch that have come in. Sorry, they came in 2 ways, so let me just organize by time. Okay, do you ever use a rolling pin on the counter and then lift it up and onto the pan lined with parchment?
So what I would not use parchment paper when you're making pizza. If you wanted to roll out on the counter on the parchment, that's great, and you can use that as a vehicle for transferring it on. I I've demonstrated before. Let me see if I can find one here. Where am I still? I want to show you what I often use to roll things out at my house. I use, and I've shown these before. These are Silpat Mats. These obviously are this size. I use these, I have these in all different shapes and sizes. Think of this as reusable parchment paper. This is actually a great surface for rolling out any kind of dough. I have one that I got from King Arthur that actually has the circuit, has like an 8-inch diameter, 9-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch. So I have a guide for the circular. It also has a ruler along the bottom. So if I know the measurements of the pans that I'm trying to get it into, I can roll it out. And I tend to use, instead of the traditional rolling pin, I tend to use the French style rolling pin like this, because I just find it's a little bit easier for me to manipulate instead of using the one that has the traditional ones that most American cooks have. What I like about this is that I can use my body weight to kind of get in and over, so I feel like I can get in more into the corners and have a little bit more precision. So this is a French style rolling pin.
The next question was, what was the name of the sauce that you used?
So Rouse is a brand of sauce. They make marinara, they make all different sorts of sauces. And what I like about it is that it's all, I'm a very big fan of, I'm a very big fan, except here's the pepperoni, that there's probably some preservatives in that pepperoni. This is more an artisanal salami, so I probably could pronounce the names and all of that. I very rarely use bottled sauce. Pizza is one of the only ones that I use it for, because often when I'm doing pizza, I'm a little bit more in a hurry. So what I love about this product is I can read and know every single product in here. The first product on the list is actually the most important: Italian whole peel tomatoes. So it's whole peel tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, olive oil, carrots, onion, salt, oregano, garlic, and basil. That's exactly what I would do if I were making it at home. Some of the other, this is made in Italy, this particular, it's called Rouse, R-A-O-S. You can get it at Market Basket, Wegmans, they sell it at Wilson's. It's a really high quality product. The other thing that I like about it is that there isn't any added sugar. A lot of the American sauces have added sugar in them. For some reason, somewhere along the way, I think us Americans thought that maybe because people thought that ketchup and sauce were similar. I do have friends that grew up in the Midwest who really thought that ketchup was tomato sauce. So ketchup has its time and place. It does not have time and place on my pizza. So.
Do you always put the cheese on first and the meat, or other toppings on top of the cheese? Sorry, was that clear? I can try to reword it.
Like, what order do I put?
Yeah, exactly.
I usually put the meat on top of the cheese, but there have been times when I do it, in the other direction. If you're using things that are a little bit more sensitive to heat, you do want to sort of play with the ordering. I happen to be a huge fan of anchovy pizza. I love anchovies. I actually think that they're the perfect foil for tomato and cheese. So, I would put the tomato, my anchovies on the top and try to make a nice pattern. I think it also depends, you also could be using feta, you could be using goat cheese. So you really want to pay attention to the sensitivity to heat of the things that you are putting on the pizza. So for example, one of my son's best friends, his favorite pizza is Hawaiian pizza, right? The pineapple, the ham. So you do have to be a little bit more careful in that high heat, because if you're using a pineapple that had been soaked in syrup, which a lot of products are, that's going to caramelize really quickly. So you just want to give some thought. So it is sometimes really fun to put the meat under the cheese. But I love when like the salami gets sort of crispy, a little bit like it is right here. So I tend to put my meat on top.
I know too, there's like the Detroit style where they put the cheese on first and then blobs of sauce all over the top of it as well.
It's really interesting to see sort of the different manifestations of pizza. So for example, I spent my childhood in Puerto Rico, but my parents are originally from New York City. So to me, pizza is that New York style, crispy, thin, really yummy. And what's really interesting is that a lot of the pizza that we get here in Boston is, it's more Greek and Armenian. It has a thicker crust to it. It has a little bit of a different cheese blend. I am partial to that, maybe that's why my favorite, I love Pinocchio's, I love Regina's in the North End, because to me, that's the more traditional pizza. And of course, I love the Sicilian style from Pinocchio's.
What, I forget if you answered this already, but what cheeses do you use for like a white pizza? That's what somebody had written in.
So it depends on what the combination, so if I were doing a white pizza, like with spinach and feta, I would be using the feta. You could also do, some people use ricotta, and there's some really beautiful locally made ricotta products that you can get. You can get it at Wilson's, like from the Mozzarella House. I believe they're based in Peabody. Their homemade ricotta is beautiful. And actually, I can also share, I have a recipe for making homemade ricotta, and that's really beautiful. If you do like the homemade ricotta, you could do a little bit of kale, some butternut squash. You could use goat cheese if you're doing a white pizza. The possibilities are endless. So if I were going to do like a goat cheese, I might do it with maybe some figs and prosciutto. That's a really nice combination. If you're going to do the feta, spinach, onion, like that's a really classic combination. If you were going to do the ricotta, you also could drizzle, you could do a little bit like a drizzle of honey, maybe some pistachio nuts, making a little bit on the sweeter side, but it's really fantastic.
Which brand of olive oil do you recommend?
So I currently am using, I have a friend who brings in olive oil from Greece. It's from her family's estates. It's called Pardon. But I have to say that there's some really good quality olive oils in the supermarket as well. I really try to make sure that it's extra virgin. What extra virgin means is that it's from that first press. So that really has that beautiful, that combination. It's kind of strange, but olive oil does have a fruity and a peppery combination to it. And sometimes people who try olive oils here in the States, at first they're a little bit put off because they're not, that really is an indication of a good quality olive oil, that it has that combination of fruitiness, but a little bit of that pungent peppery bite. That means that the olives were pressed at the optimum time. What I would do is that, you can get some of those really beautiful finishing oils. If you're going to get those finishing oils, they're called finishing oils for a purpose, right? So that's something that you would drizzle lightly if you wanted to put it on at the end. It's not something that you will use in high quality, like in large amounts to make a dressing, or if a recipe called for a third of a cup. Taste some different oils. You'll get to see that there's a difference. There's some that are meant for cooking. So, the Filippo Berio, the Bertolli that you find in the supermarket, those are great to do your general cooking, but it's worth investing in some of those finer ones that you can get at some of the oil shops. You can get them at the specialty stores. Like we, for example, spend our summers, we have a house in Kennebunk, Maine, and there's a fantastic store there called Mainly Drizzle, and they have a fantastic selection of artisanal olive oils. So those are certainly things that are worth, looking for and finding to enhance your collection of olive oils, especially when you're doing some cooking like this.
Someone asked, if they're using a pizza stone, should it be preheated?
Yes, I would highly recommend that you preheat that stone. I have friends that actually leave their pizza stones in the oven all the time, so it's just always there. It's interesting because it also acts as a little bit of an insulator and helps maintain temperature. It's kind of an interesting segue to one of my favorite Julia. It's one of my favorite Julia Childs stories, because I just think it speaks to so many of the things that I admire about her. So this is in her book, My Life in France. She talks about how what made her cookbook so incredible is that they were so thoroughly researched. Those recipes were made over and over and over again. So in Mastering the Art of French Cooking, they were trying to teach American cooks how to replicate these French recipes in an American kitchen. So not only did they have to be conscious of ingredients, they also had to be conscious of the difference in equipment. Like our stoves, our ovens are a little bit different than what they might have in France. And one thing that was particularly challenging was the baguette. Trying to replicate the outside texture, the crispiness on the outside, that beautiful, cooked bread in the middle. And what they stumbled upon was that the best way to achieve this in American oven, this is like unbelievable, was to use an asbestos tile. We all know now that that's an incredibly carcinogenic, asbestos is incredibly carcinogenic. But at the time, they didn't know that. The book came out, and within months of the book coming out, this whole thing came out about asbestos being a carcinogen. And I think they thought initially like, oh my God, we're done, whatever. We put this in the book, but obviously it wasn't their fault, and it's been corrected in subsequent editions. But these are the things that we find sometimes by experimenting. So those pizza stones actually really do a great job at helping your oven maintain heat. They're providing another surface in the oven that's holding onto that heat and helping you to maintain the temperature. And that ability to maintain the temperature is what's key to being able to cook a really fantastic pizza.
Let's see, what kind of countertop oven are you using?
So this is one of my favorite new toys. I've had it for a few years now. This is a Wolf oven. And what's incredible about it is that it has an incredible range of capabilities for stoves, like a countertop. This can toast, it can broil, bake, roast, warm, and proof. And I actually use this to proof a lot as well. What I like about it is that, I can do 8 or 10 pieces of toast at a time. So if I want to make toast for the entire family, I can do it. What I like about it too is that I have a beautiful Thermometer dual fuel oven that I use a lot, and some of you have seen because I've done demos for my kitchen. But sometimes I just want to do something, if I'm doing fish, or cooking a smaller amount, I don't want to waste the electricity in firing out that big range. So I just find this to be an incredibly versatile piece of equipment. And I'm really happy about it. And I've gotten a ton of use out of it. So we have one here at the end because I use it to do demonstrations here as well as in the outdoor. We're going to be reopening our outdoor garden on May 1st. And I've been doing cooking classes here inside this room, but I will also begin to do cooking classes outside. And I've even used this outside, and it's been fantastic.
Do you use any other seasonings for pizza besides oregano?
Yeah, so Penzi's makes a fantastic Italian seasoning blend. So it has oregano in it, it has basil in it. So I would use oregano, basil. I think that this is a legacy from my parents. In pizza places in New York City, they often have garlic salt. So I like sometimes put garlic salt on it. Red pepper flakes, my kids really like. My middle child, Connor, loves spicy. So he usually puts red pepper flakes. We've learned some interesting things in our travels. Apparently, we have very dear friends that live in Norway, and they have like a mayonnaise sauce that they put on their pizza. So it's really interesting as you travel around the world to see the different interpretations that people have and the different condiments and seasoning people put on it. If I were in season, like we're going to be doing part of the culinary, it's going to be a culinary garden, our garden outside. We're going to have different raised beds, and one of the beds is going to have an extensive collection of different herbs. So like being able to put like fresh cut basil on your pizza is always so delicious to me. Marjoram also works really well. The oregano, being able to go into your garden and be able to, to pick some things. You can do rosemary and potato on a pizza. I know that sounds a little bit funny, but it actually is really, really good with, again, using that really high quality olive oil to drizzle over the pizza. Just gives it a little bit of a different flavor.
Someone asked if you could, what was the name of the brand of the oven again?
It's Wolf, WOLF. So they're one of the leading manufacturers of ovens in the country. I mean, they make full size ranges. They make, beautiful wall ovens, they're all Sub-Zero. They're now one company.
And then say if you were using pesto, someone asked, would you use it instead of tomato sauce or in addition to tomato sauce?
You can do both. A lot of people will just do like a pesto pizza with some Parmesan, and also maybe some shaved, like beautiful shaved pieces of fresh Parmesan. But you can also do the tomato sauce, and maybe one thing that might look really pretty is you do the tomato sauce, do the rounds of mozzarella, maybe cut these a little bit smaller, and then put a dollop of pesto on each of them and make it look really pretty and symmetrical. That would be really lovely. The pesto that I have here was actually made, there's a program out of Tufts called New Entry Sustainable Farming. Some people might have heard of the World Peas CSA. A lot of people in Lexington supported that CSA, Community Sustainable Agriculture. But this was actually made from basil that was grown locally, here in Massachusetts. So there's a lot of great products like that you can get at our farmers market when it reopens, and a lot of the farms that are around the area. And also too, like pesto doesn't only need to be made with basil, it could be made with arugula, it can be made with different types of nuts, it could be made with, it could be made with some of the nut cheeses that are becoming a little bit more popular now as people sort of turn to more plant-based diets. But really, pizza is a blank slate, and you really should just feel free to put out the things that you like, that you and your family and friends enjoy the most, and really just enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Trisha. If there are no other questions, we will share out the recipe for the pizza. Someone had asked if it includes a ricotta recipe, but it does not.
I will send to Matt as soon as we're done, the recipe for the homemade ricotta.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Let me just walk you really quickly through the recipe. It's super easy. You need to have, you need milk or cream, an acid, which could be either lemon juice or vinegar. And basically what you do is you bring the milk to boil, you add the acid. And what you're going to do is you're going to let it sit for a few minutes, and then you're going to let it sit for about 15, 20 minutes. And then you're going to pour it through the cheesecloth, and basically the curds are going to separate, and you're going to have the ricotta. It's excellent on pizza. It's actually really good as a dessert if you wanted to shave some chocolate and some nuts, maybe a little bit of local honey, and mix that together. It also tastes really good with berries. It's really good spread on crostini. It's a really nice versatile recipe to have in your repertoire, especially as we turn into spring and we want to do some of that more casual entertainment.
Thank you so much, Trisha, for sharing your expertise and diverse pizza types. There's seemingly infinite.
Great. So please come by and visit at the inn. We are open. We're open for guests. If you have family or friends coming in from out of town, we are open for lunch and dinner Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. On Saturdays and Sundays, we have our incredible champagne brunch. We're sold out for this Sunday for Easter, but if you're looking for something special for Mother's Day, please go on our website and make your reservations. We'd love to have you. And of course, as always, if you have any questions about these recipes or any of the other recipes that I've demonstrated for the library, please don't hesitate to be in touch at tpkennealy@innofhastingspark.com. If you haven't followed me on Instagram, please do. I'm doing a new series called Kitchen Questions You Are Afraid to Ask. So there's some juicy little tidbits about different things that you might have always wondered about, but maybe were too afraid to ask. And of course, if you have any questions that fall into that category, feel free to send them to me via email, and maybe it'll be featured on one of our Instagram posts. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy spring.
Thank you, Trisha, and thank you everyone for attending. I will send out the email with all of that information and the recipes later today. Thank you.